Hello, everyone. Yeah, I think that's smart, Scott, is to start when you have the time and can be patient and not rush it. I think that's a good idea. I'm very curious to get your thoughts once you get it together and compare the systems that you have and get your thoughts on, kind of any observations that you have. So I think that'll be good. But hello, everyone. Welcome to Blackbird Chronicles, episode 17, the Good Friday edition. Hopefully, those of you in the US had a good Thanksgiving yesterday and ate lots of food and spent time with your families. That's certainly what I did. Yep, I'm going to put it on visuals in a moment. I'm just going to run through some of the things that we're going to do today. So I wanted to quickly look through some Black Friday deals, which I think will be, obviously relevant given that it is Black Friday, and potentially Cyber Monday deals coming up. I did want to talk about, given the increase in price of RAM, the rapid increase in price of RAM, I did want to talk about kind of how to match RAM with CPUs. And so I put together a really interesting table to do that. I'm currently working on an Intel memory video. I've done a couple of AMD memory videos, and I thought it's time that I do one for Intel CPUs, so show a little bit of love that side of the fence. I haven't made as much progress as what I'd hoped, but I did discover something very strange, so I'll talk about that. I did want to just do a quick look at the previous video and given some of the discussion to see if I did get it right when I named the King of Gaming. And then I want to talk a little bit about the Blackbird Army on Skool as well. I know we've got a bunch of Blackbird Army members here today, and so I appreciate that as always. I appreciate the support. I appreciate the support on the channel of all, anyone that supports the channel, subscribers, members, Blackbird Army members in Skool. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate the support. Which brings me to an interesting thing, is that it's exactly 2 years since I started the channel. I started the channel, 2 years and a day, I guess. I started the channel on Thanksgiving in 2023. That was my first video. In fact, now I'm curious. My first video on my channel, if you scroll to it, was just kind of an origin story video. But now I want to see the actual date. So if I scroll to that, the date is November 23rd. Oh, okay, so it's a little over because I guess that year Thanksgiving was a week earlier. But November 23rd, 2023 was the first video that I published. And by the way, you may have seen it, but if you haven't seen it and you take a look at it, just remember, it's my first video. I wasn't as enthusiastic as I could have been in that video, to put it mildly. And I wasn't super comfortable in front of the camera. And I tried to be as calm as possible. It turns out that I may have taken that a little bit too far. I think the content itself, what's in it, it tells my story, but I could have probably been a little bit more enthusiastic and instead of putting people to sleep. So I definitely have learned a lot along the journey and along the way, and I really greatly appreciate all of your support. It's been amazing how rapidly the channel has grown, and it's something I truly love doing. I love interacting with the community. And I'm really looking forward to the future, and I've got a lot of things planned, and I really have way too many things to do that I am excited about, and it's prioritizing which ones I'm going to do first. That's always the challenge, while doing content for the YouTube channel, of course. So thank you so much for your support. I couldn't do it without you. Really appreciate it. Hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving, as I mentioned yesterday, if you're in the US. If you're not in the US, if you're in the UK or Australia, where I grew up, Turkey Day is Christmas Day. It's a month later, but that's what I grew up, and I'm used to. But anyway, I had a great day. Spent time with my family. It's always fun. About halfway through putting up the tree. and that's always a task. So I'm going to finish that this afternoon with my daughter. That should be fun. Okay, so Black Friday deals. So by the way, I got a brand new monitor. This is kind of a funny story. I ordered a new monitor. I've been looking at this for a while. And basically my layout is I had a 4K OLED in front of me, like a gaming panel that I was daily driving off. And I have this large monitor to the left. So on live streams, you'd always see me do this because I'd be looking at the chat window and things over here. I realized that I really needed kind of it all in one monitor in front of me, which this one is. And so I've been tracking the Samsung Odyssey, that 4K, the monitor that's basically dual 4K screens side by side. And I've been tracking it for a while, went on sale, I ordered it. I got it a few days ago, and my wife's pretty cool with, obviously the fact that I have a YouTube channel and do this. She has a social media presence, a bigger one than me actually. So she's really supportive of this, but I get a lot of stuff. And so I always feel, a little guilty when I do something like this, even though it's for work and I can justify it. And at heart, I'm a PC enthusiast. And so, I go a little overboard when it comes to components, and I know a whole bunch of Blackbird Army members that feel the same way or have the same disease. Let's put it that way. So this monitor gets delivered at the front, and I'm like, all right, I want to bring it inside quietly, and I want to get it upstairs into my office, and I want to unpack it and everything and get rid of the box. Basically get rid of the evidence, right? Let's be honest. So, I could barely carry this thing. This box is about 6 foot tall, and I can barely carry it by myself. I don't want to ask for any help. So I bring it in the back door, and I just didn't even think about this. My daughter is there, turns around, she goes, "What is that?" As loud as humanly possible. So I'm like, oh God, like please be quiet, right? Anyway, so yes, it was nothing like telegraphing it as loudly as humanly possible, right? It's my own fault. I should have prepped her in advance. It's near the holiday period, so she probably thought it was a present for her. And anyway, so good fun times, right? It's the journey of the PC enthusiast, right? How to sneak stuff in and get it in your area so no one sees, right? Anyway, yep, and Tony and Scott, I know you can relate to this. I'm sure you can feel my pain. But anyway, Black Friday sales. So first of all, if you have a Micro Center near you, it's always good to go to a Micro Center, right? I'm not going to cover Micro Center here because a lot of you don't have one that's close enough. But if you do have one, that's a great place to start, right? Go in store and see what they have, or look online first, but go in store and see what they have. That's always a good place to start. For those of you that don't have access to a Micro Center, my two favorite are Newegg and Amazon. So Amazon, I find a little challenging to navigate for a PC component sometimes. Even when you write in the exact item that you want, it'll show a whole bunch of weird stuff. So I always like to start at Newegg. Now, Newegg I have a love-hate relationship with. They are much better than Amazon when something first comes out to try and get it from there. But they price gouge their customers, and I really hate that about Newegg. And you'll have a look in a moment with RAM. They're the first to increase the price of their RAM. And they did it with GPUs. They really do. They price gouge their customers, and I do not like that. So I always start at Newegg, and if I see a deal that I like, I will jump onto Amazon and see. I'd prefer to get it from Amazon. I jump on there to see if it's the same price or they have it in stock, and if not, then I'll order from Newegg. But that's how I do things. So if you go to Newegg, click on Black Friday Ultimate Sales, and we'll just run through a few here because a couple of things that I noticed, right? I'm trying to scroll the screen in front of me here. So first thing is the 9800X 3D. That is not a great deal. I mean, it's an okay deal, but it's not really on sale. $450 is about what it should be. I know the $479 is what it sells at, and it's very popular CPU. So getting $25 off is okay, but it's definitely not, in my opinion, Black Friday worthy or Cyber Monday. So I would hold out on that if you're looking for a 9800 XDD and see what happens over the weekend and Monday. That's my opinion. The 990 Pro 2TB SSD is a good deal. Currently, they have this at Amazon for exactly the same price. So I use, first of all, there's no difference in gaming between Gen 4 and Gen 5. Gen 4 will stay cooler, I'm sorry. So I recommend Gen 4 SSDs for gaming. I wouldn't bother going to Gen 5 SSDs. The motherboard support, like chipset support for Gen 4 M.2 SSDs is greater. I just think it's a great drive. It's my favorite drive. I use the 990 Pro for all of my bench testing. So all of my test benches, I've got 5 of them. I'm about to build the 6th one. Use 990 Pros. I basically, the way I set it up is I have a 1 terabyte for OS, and then I have a 4 terabyte for games. Great SSD. If you're interested, grab one. One thing I will caution you all on is that the increase in RAM pricing is going to hit flash memory too. So if you look at Micron, traded as MU on the stock market, you will see their stock going up. The shortages are impacting RAM kind of first. It will trickle over. SSDs have been slowly increasing in price. It will trickle over into SSDs too. So if you're on the market for storage, I would try and pick one up during the sales if you're looking. I think it's a good time to buy. The ASRock Challenger 9070 XT, $599.99. If you look at my 9070 XT versus 5070 Ti, I've got 2 videos on the channel. You'll see that at $600, this is a very, very competitive deal. Now, GPU pricing, I think, will start to go up in the future as well due to the shortage of RAM. The VRAM on GPUs is going to get more difficult to come by. I know I talked about this yesterday on the podcast that I did, but I really do think that we could see, basically NVIDIA came out and said that they're only going to supply their partners, add-in board partners like Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, etc., with the GPU chip itself and not the VRAM that goes along with it. Those partners are going to have to acquire the VRAM chips themselves. So that could cause a little bit of a period of time where there's a shortage of GPUs. And it's going to be delayed, right? Because they've already produced a whole bunch of GPUs for the market currently. So if you're in the market for a GPU, I think now is a good time to buy. I highly recommend not going out and going crazy because I don't know. I'm basing this on what I read and what I understand to be the issue and kind of thinking through the repercussions. So just please bear that in mind. Don't go crazy. Don't go buy, 5 5090s and try and sell them for a profit. This might very well not eventuate. And I don't have insider information to know what those projections look like on RAM availability. So keep that in mind. This is a very good deal. Regardless of any of that, this is a good deal anyway. So, looking at that, I think that's a great chart, a great card. I've had ASRock GPUs before. They're okay. I don't think that they're a terrible brand. I don't think that they're a top brand. I think they're kind of in the middle. This is interesting. This is the Ventus 5070 Ti. This is a card I did have and I did test. What's fascinating is if you compare this model to the much more expensive Vanguard, which I did in my video, you'll see that if you can overclock both to be roughly the same. Now the Vanguard will stay cooler because it has a much bigger cooler, so the temperatures will stay lower, but the performance is virtually identical when overclocked. And you can follow the guide to do that. This is a very good price, right? So that's below the MSRP, right? $729.99. That is a good card to pick up. That's a great card to pick up, right? So that's something, again, if you're in the market for a GPU, that might be a good option. Some of these, by the way, that one is not available on Amazon. So some of these are Newegg specific. I don't have any problem buying from Newegg. I just would prefer to go with Amazon. Here's one that's interesting. I did test the 9600X against the 9800 XUD, 265K, and 9700X recently. This price of 200 is about what I bought it at. So, you know, I think this is a case of inflating the price just before Black Friday and then taking, you know, cutting the price and basically having it the same price it's always been. So, okay. You know, 23% off something that, I mean, I don't think they were selling it at $279. Maybe they did for a day before, like on Wednesday, and then they dropped the price. So it's a great chip, but if I would recommend trying to get a 9700X if you're considering the 9600X. It'll last longer. But I like them both. Both of those chips are configured poorly, so tuning them is a great way. You'll get a 20% boost in performance. It's crazy, regardless of silicon quality. All right, some people may get 18, some people may get 22, but you're going to get roughly that. These are phenomenal, outstanding chips to tune. So really, really great chip if you're in the market. We come across some RAM. This is insane, right? I mean, look at that. It's DDR5 6000 CL36 for $400. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later. I did actually pick up a very good deal, and I wanted to share it today. It lasted all of 15 minutes. I picked up a kit of DDR5 6000 CL30 from, I forget the name of the brand. I'm in incognito mode here, so it doesn't show my address. I forget the name of the brand, but it was, I will find it. It's the one with the LCD display on the side, which I think is somewhat pointless, but that's not why I picked it up. It was $169, which is, in today's day and age, the reality of today with RAM pricing, was outstanding. So I went to Newegg, bought it, and 15 minutes later it was sold out. So I don't know why it was cheap. Maybe I'll get it and it doesn't work or something. I have no idea why. Maybe it was getting returned a lot, but that's really cheap for today's prices. These prices are just crazy. I mean, $599, what is this? This is probably DDR5 6000. It is, but it's a 64 gig kit for $600. But you get $20 off, so awesome deal. Unfortunately, I think this is the new reality. I mean, on cases and power supplies, some really good deals. Monitors are some great deals. You know, here's the 990 Pro 4 terabyte model. This is the one I use. So I use this one, the 1 terabyte model, as my OS. So I always separate the OS from games. And I use a 4 terabyte version for games. So I think that's a great arrangement, and it keeps your games separate. I think that's pretty cool. I did actually pick up one of these dusters, by the way. I highly recommend maintaining your system and opening it up once a month or so, blowing out all the dust, holding the fan blades while you blow out the dust. You can spool the blades up too much and cause a problem, so I would be very careful with that, especially since these are very high pressure devices that blow a lot of air. So I picked up one of those. Always good. I like Corsair power supplies. This is a pretty good deal. It's 1,000 watt. I mean, it's probably is this a platinum? I think. Oh, it's a gold. Okay. Well, it's cybernetics gold, which is more stringent than the older ratings, right? So, but it's a good. It's a good power supply if you're in the market for a power supply. 159 is not bad. Corsair has very good power supplies. They have a lot of good stuff. They have good RAM. I mean, I love the design of their RAM. The IC's the same, so, or it's worse, right? Let's see. Man, it's depressing looking at RAM. Maybe I'll just ignore the RAM. I'm just seeing if there's anything else. Always nice to throw in a vacuum cleaner in the mix. There are some good deals at Newegg. They're trying to copy Micro Center, where you can buy a CPU motherboard, and it comes with RAM. The RAM that they provide is not great RAM, or it comes with a AIO. There was a very good deal at Newegg on the 265. It may still be there. Let me see. Let's see. Core Ultra 65K. This may still be a deal. Let's see. All right, so if I add it to cart, let's see what it does. Yep, so this is still oh man, I gotta sign in, which I don't wanna do here. All right, so the deal is that it here, you can see it here. So it's $309.99, and then it comes with the Battlefield 6 game, so it's $60, and it comes with a 240 AIO for, you know, $100 value. So it's $160 off. So you're basically cutting the price of this in half if you need the AIO. So be careful. If you don't need the AIO, all right, so just keep that in mind. But that's pretty good. So, you know, certainly check that out. There's a couple of good deals here on some of the items that haven't been selling as well, like the 265K, 285K. So getting some of those deals can be very lucrative. Man, this is a very cheap AIO. It's a 240 from Razer. They teamed up with Hambo. That's weird. You know, it's funny when you see something too cheap, you think to yourself, "Oh man, that must suck." That's my first thought. And if you're really in the market for it, why don't you pick up an RTX Pro 6000 for only $8,000, right? Fun times. Okay, let's see. There was a couple of other GPUs. All right, so here's a good one. So the Asus Prime, Asus always puts a premium on the price of their things. The Asus Prime 5070 Ti for $749.99 is pretty good. I think that's a very high quality, good card to get for that. I say this in light of the fact that I'm becoming increasingly skeptical that NVIDIA, becoming increasingly skeptical that NVIDIA is going to announce the Super Series at CES. I'm also becoming increasingly skeptical, so not skeptical, skeptical that they will launch the Super Series at all. I don't see why they would do that, like the need to do that. So that's something to keep in mind. So if you are in the market for a GPU, now, in my opinion, is a very good time to buy one. 9950 X3D, again, it's been priced around this for a while. They're going to launch the dual X3D chip. When they do, that'll be more expensive than this, but it may help to lower the price of the 9950 X3D. The other, this looks like the same card. It's very weird. Okay, and then here's the 265K deal. The other one I was going to show you, well, here's a Gen 5 Samsung SSD, the 9100 Pro. You'd have to compare that price to the Gen 4. I don't think really I wouldn't get a Gen 5 SSD for gaming unless it was the same price as the Gen 4. And even then, if you're doing a small form factor build, I would still go with the Gen 4. So doesn't mean that this isn't a great SSD. It is, right? It's Samsung. Samsung makes phenomenal SSDs. Yeah, the 2 terabyte is a little more expensive. I think the 2 terabyte Gen 4 was $169, is $199, so $30 premium. Not too bad. I might pick a couple of those up. Again, Corsair power supply is all good. There was a deal that I wanted to. So, if you go into components and storage, you can shop per item. So if you go under GPUs, and then scroll down and look at 50 series, and I just wanted to look at this because I picked one of these up yesterday, and you can sort by lowest price. So there's a bunch of, well, this is an open box, but Gigabyte WindForce is the MSRP price. There's an open box and refurbished that are pretty close. This is like a base, this Inspire is a slightly different version of like the Ventus with different cooling, but it's equivalent to a base model. There was one I picked up yesterday, and it doesn't, the deal's not on anymore. So I picked up I picked up a TUF 5080 yesterday for $1,100, which is pretty good for a TUF. And that's basically it for my shopping. I'm not gonna do any more. And then you get into crazy prices. Like, this has got to be from a third-party seller. Be really careful buying from third-party sellers on Newegg. That's when you see the prices go absolutely crazy, right? Kind of stick to the cheaper option. Stick to the Newegg, right? So when you go on it, this will say sold by and shipped by Newegg. Always check that, right? Like, always check that. It's a good way to have something come from China, and I've done that before, and you get the item, but it can, unless it's really hard to get, I wouldn't do that. So anyway, okay, so that's my 20 minutes on Black Friday. I'm gonna move on because I got some really cool stuff to show you today. All right, so this is the next one, right? So given that RAM pricing is out of control, one of the things I recognize is that a lot of people are asking me what CPU should I match with the RAM that I have. And so I thought this would be a cool table to put together, right? What are the best CPU options for different RAM speeds? So, you know, if you've got a RAM kit that's 6,000 or below, my suggestion is to go with an AMD CPU to get the most out of your RAM. You know, obviously we're talking about DDR5 here, so AM5 is what you want to go to for the socket or for the motherboard, and get an X3D CPU. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a moment, but X3D CPUs tend to be somewhat insensitive to the RAM speed. So if you've got a 5600 kit or even a 5200 kit, get an X3D CPU. I'm going to show you in a moment with actual data what that looks like, all right? Between 6,000 and 6,400, I also think you should stick with AMD, because AMD, the memory controller, can stay in one-to-one mode up to about 6,400. And at those speeds, I wouldn't bother getting 6,400 for X3D CPUs. So this is if you've got a 7,000X CPU or a 9,000X, like the 9700X, 7700X, something like that, 9950X, right? That's what I would do. Between 6,400 and 8,000, you're in no man's land for AMD, because above 6,400, you're switching to 2-to-1 mode, which is the unified memory controller to the memory speed is basically halved, right? So because you're in 2-to-1 mode, I highly recommend, if you've got RAM between 6,400 and 8,000, to go with Intel. Now, I say that, of course you can take a 7,200 kit and down clock it to 6,400 or 6,000 and run it in one-to-one mode. You absolutely can do that, right? So this table is if you want to stick with XMP or Expo settings, right? And by the way, if you're running AMD and you find an XMP kit on sale, get it. It's not going to matter. If you're, and same in reverse, right? Intel and Expo, it's not going to matter, right? They're just memory profiles, right? That's all. Yes, there's a little bit about maybe compatibility. I wouldn't worry too much. If you find a kit on sale and it matches what you need, just get it. I wouldn't worry. Between 6,400 and 8,000, like I said, if you're running an AMD system, you can obviously lower your speed. In fact, if you're running speed and memory speed between that now on an AMD system, down clock your speed and tighten your timings, and you will have much better performance. So either get Raptor Lake or Arrow Lake here. That's what would be my recommendation. However, so if you're trying to shoot for 8,000 on Raptor Lake, you need a 2-DIMM motherboard, and I probably should put this up here too, right? So between 8,000 and 8,400, the choice is yours. 8,400 is likely not going to be stable on AMD. You're likely going to be able to run 8,000 or maybe 8,200 stable. And that running 8,000, regardless of what other YouTubers may claim. I've run it 1,000 times. 8,000, you look in my videos, is faster than 6,400, right? I just want to be very clear about that. I don't know, I've done this extensively on multiple videos, multiple times. 8,000 is the speed that will give you slightly better performance. If you've got an X3D CPU, it's slightly better. If you've got a non-X3D CPU, it'll be meaningfully better, like, 5%, 4%, something like that. All right. So you can run either here. You can run any of the CPUs. The warning here is that if you try and run those speeds on Raptor Lake, you really should have a 2-DIMM motherboard so that you significantly increase your chances of having a stable system. That's really the only proviso here. Above 8400, you're going to want to be running Core Ultra, and you're going to be wanting to run CUDIM memory, right? So hopefully that table helps people to understand what kind of CPU you should go after depending on what your RAM is. So we were never in the situation where you would have RAM and say, what CPU should I buy? But now that RAM prices are increasing, I think it's an interesting way to look at it, which is if I've got a RAM kit and I don't want to spend a fortune, what CPU should I buy, and kind of motherboard and system, and hopefully this gives you some guidance, right? So, hey DeZeus, appreciate you joining, buddy. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about RAM, given the pricing. I did this video recently. This was a video comparing speed, CAS latency, rank, and the Infinity Fabric for X3D chips, right? Ryzen, AM5 Ryzen X3D chips. So, keep that in mind. It is quite specific, right, in terms of its applicability. This is not applicable to Intel, and you're going to see better performance on non-X3D chips. And I have another video on that, which is on the channel, and you can see that. So I thought this would be interesting. This was 2 months ago, 9/16, right? So 2 months ago, these were the kits I used, and these were the pricings. Crazy, right? So this is a Royal Neo, right? So that's the, extra bling version of the G-Skill kits, of the Trident Z5 kits. CL30, 125. I mean, we were spoiled. We didn't know it. Obviously, if we did, I would have picked up 1,000 more kits, but nonetheless. Then if you move to the 6400 CL32, 142, and then for the DDR5 8000 CL40 kit, 169. I mean, damn, I wish I had those prices today. Then you have the low latency kits, which were a little more expensive in some places, and then the dual rank kits, right? So the dual rank, you're going from 16 to 32 per DIMM, or it's 48 to 96, right? So instead of going 24 per DIMM and having 48, you would have 48 per DIMM and have 96, right? So 96 and 64 are your dual rank options. 48 and 24 and 16 per DIMM are your single rank options, right? So most expensive kit was this V color. Oh, by the way, that was the kit I picked up, a V color one with the LCD, right? But this one was interesting. This was the 2x32 kit at a DDR5 8000. It was the first kit I saw on that, and I'm glad I was able to pick it up. Much looser timings though. Okay, so I took this exact table, and a couple of hours ago, I tried to find the pricing. It's insane. All right, so the kit, first of all, start in the top left corner, this base. The kit that was $124.99, the cheapest I could see it for was $400. The kit, let's see, this DDR5 8000 kit at $169, it was $420. And these were on Amazon, by the way. Newegg pricing was way higher. That's why I'm saying Newegg will intentionally try and screw you over on pricing. So just be careful of Newegg. I'm not a fan when they do that, right? They did that for GPUs too. So Amazon tends to be slow with getting products on their page, but they also tend to be slower in updating their pricing. So the crazy one is this Corsair Dominator Titanium, beautiful looking RAM, $249.99. So that's DDR5, 6400 CL32, and $782. What about this 64 gig kit from G-Skill CL30, DDR5 6000 CL30 from $220 to $735. And I couldn't even source the V-Color Manta Xfinity kit. So yeah, that gives you an idea of where we're at, and it will probably go up more. So in that video, I showed the performance, and I showed that there really wasn't a huge difference, right? It was not a meaningful difference. 8000 gave you the best performance, but it was not a meaningful difference, right? You're talking about compared to DDR5 6000 CL30, 6400, you had a small boost in average. 8000, you had a even smaller boost over the 6400, right? So it's somewhat linear, but very, very small. So the question that I have now from a lot of people is, well, should I just use 5600 or 5400? What would be that performance decrement, right? How much would it reduce? How much would I lose? So what you can do in that video, I showed 6000, 6400, and 8000. They're the data points, right? This is the average FPS line, and this is the 1% low FPS line. You can basically just fit a straight line. You can see that's roughly, it's a very, very good fit for a straight line, and just extrapolate down and extrapolate up. And that's what I did here. And so for the 1% lows, if you did, so with a 9800 X3D or 9950 X3D, you're gonna lose about 1% in performance if you use 5200 megatransfers per second. In average, you're going to lose even less, 0.2%. And even if you're able to get 8400 working on an X3D system, you're only looking at 1.7% above DDR5 6000. By the way, yellow is projected, an estimate. White is measured. I actually ran the games. So even if you were to do this, it's not really worth it. You could just run 8000 and you'd still have most of this benefit. But the main point here is to say that if you're running an X3D chip, AM5 X3D, and you see a cheap, you need RAM, right? So that's the other thing. If you need RAM, or you're buying an X3D chip and you want to pair it with some RAM, grab 5600, grab 5200, grab some looser timings. It's not really going to matter at 1080p low graphics settings, which is when they're heavily loaded. Now, at higher resolutions and graphic settings, I showed in my last video that it will basically, the information will fill up the extra L3 cache and spill over into the system memory. That's what I believe is happening. And so you will have a slightly larger impact at those conditions, but remember, it's heavily GPU bound at those conditions, and so even then the impact is going to be relatively small. So I just want to give anyone that is running an AMD X3D system or planning to run one, that one of the biggest benefits I see of AMD AM5 or Ryzen X3D CPUs is that they can run effectively with lower speed RAM. I would not run 5200 on a Core Ultra system and expect good performance. It just won't happen. I mean, I'm doing that now just to check to see what that looks like, but I highly recommend not doing that. So that's one of the biggest advantages. I think AMD is well positioned for this RAM crunch, given that their chips, their X3D chips at least, perform well with lower speed memory. So I thought that might be helpful. You can always do this with the data that I provide. Just grab the points, fit a curve, extrapolate, and kind of come up with the estimates of what 5200 and 5600 would be, right? You may ask how accurate that is. I think it's going to be pretty damn accurate. I bet you if I ran this data, it's going to be slightly different, but it won't be perfectly linear, but it's going to be very close. Right? Okay. All right, with that said, I did want to move on to Intel testing because I have been, the last week I've been testing the 285K memory controller with different RAM kits, and I discovered something interesting, and I want to give a thank you to my Blackbird Army members on Skool, because one of them, Glenn, pointed this out to me, and I missed it when I first went through this. So I'm testing 8200, 9000, 7200, and 6400 kits just to see how the performance changes with different kind of speed kits, right? And I'm also testing CL. So at 8200, I was testing CL, the cast latency, and the baseline kit was CL38. So I thought, okay, I'll test CL40 and CL36. Now, the first thing that I noticed is that when I was testing CL36, I had to add a lot of voltage. I wouldn't recommend this, to get it stable. So I had to go from 1.4 volts, which was the XMP profile, up to 1.51 volts to get it stable, Kahoo stable, all right? So it's a lot of voltage to add, and I wouldn't recommend running over 1.5 volts daily, all right? So just keep that in mind. If I screw up my chip, so be it, in the name of producing high quality data. But I just wanted to show you this. This is the AIDA64 memory benchmark, and after Glenn in the chat in Skool said, you may want to take a look at this because I was getting some weird results, which basically was happening was as I decrease the CL, the performance should go up a little. As I tighten the primary timing of CL, the performance definitely shouldn't go down. It should go up a little. As I loosen that, the performance should go down a little. That's the trend I expect. In a lot of games, that's what happened. A couple of games that didn't happen. And I'm like, all right, let me retest this. And so this is 82 CL38. When I went to 82 CL36, this is what I expect to happen, right? So I ran this, and if you look at the latencies here, so 73.1, it went to 72.5. That's good. That's what it should do. And by the way, this is CL36, CL38. All right. So now go to L0 cache 0.7, 0.7. Good. It's the same. L1 cache 1.6 nanoseconds, 1.6. Good. It went from CL38, it went 4 nanoseconds for L2 cache to 3.9. That's exactly what I expect to happen. It should get a little bit faster, a little bit more performance. And then L3 cache went from 19.8 nanoseconds to 19.5. Perfect, right? When I saw that, I'm like, I'm in good shape, right? Give me 1 second. I forgot to put my my phone on quiet. Okay. But then I ran some games, and like in Marvel, Marvel Legends and Doom, I was finding the performance getting worse when I lowered the CL. And I thought, well, maybe it has something to do with the increased voltage, like maybe there's some kind of cooling issue. I just didn't understand why. And then I reran the memory benchmark, and I found this. All right, so this was the ideal case that I ran on it, and so it was fine. It went down. But then this is what happened. So I finished running the benchmarks. I saw that the performance wasn't as good. And then I thought, let me run this. And this is what happened. Look at the L3 cache. So ideally it's at 19.5, and then at CL38 it's at 19.8. 21.2. Suddenly the L3 cache got quite a lot slower. So it's no surprise that under these conditions that the performance would drop. But the question now is why? Why in, like, when I booted my system, did it look fine, and then the next second, like, then I reboot between benchmarking different games to clear the system, then all of a sudden it's higher. So this is why I can't show the results. I wanted to show a bunch of the results today, but I can't because this is weird and I need to dig in a little bit more. So just be wary of this. It's something to do with me overclocking the memory and putting a lot of voltage in, I believe. And it's like some kind of hysteresis or some weird effect of putting too much voltage in, or I'm stressing the memory controller too much and it's getting some errors or something. But yeah, I mean, that's a significant increase from 19.5 to 21.2. So just be aware of that. Something always fun when you test, you discover things like this. And I do appreciate Glenn for pointing that out. I have no idea how he managed to discover this, because I probably would have been a little lost in that. This also is a bit weird because this means that if I reboot the system, run the memory benchmark, and I get this again and test the game, the performance should go up as expected. So I'm going to talk about this in the video. I'm hoping I'm going to do a little bit more research on why it might be happening. So someone might have come across this. My guess is it's got something to do with the increase. It's a lot more voltage that I put in. So my guess is I'm doing something to the memory chips themselves. This is not a QDIM kit. This is a UDIM kit. I'm doing something that's causing the issue. What might be interesting is to take my QDIM kit and try to lower it from, say, 8800 down to 8200 and run CL36 and see if I can run it at lower voltage and see if I have this problem. So yeah, Tony is asking, am I overclocking it at the same time? Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I'm using the XMP profile. All I'm running the T-ref of 65535. That's all I'm doing. All I'm doing is changing the CL. I'm keeping everything else consistent. So I'm not going crazy on anything, but that voltage to get it stable is what's concerning to me. Okay, so I do think it could be overheating. I have dual fans blowing down on that RAM, but 1.51 volts is very high. So I bet you if I keep running this, I could screw up my CPU or the memory. I should be a little careful and do the rest of my testing before I come back and explore this further. That's probably a good thought, right? Because if I screw the CPU, then I got to get another 285K, which I have, but it's a different chip. And so, yeah, that'll be weird. The CPU is overclocked. Yeah, I'm running my 5.7 boost, 5.5, 4.9 with all of the NGU, D2D, and ring boosted as well. Running basically what I ran in my last video. So the CPU is overclocked and tuned, right? Okay, all right, next, let's see what else. Okay, I did want to point this out. So given the bleak outlook of RAM, one of the things I want to talk about, I talked about Glenn helping me out in Skool. In fact, all of the Skool community that I have there are so incredibly helpful. I mean, you know, the people that are here, Tony, Scott, DeZeus, these are phenomenal people that jump in. No one makes fun of anyone. No one belittles anyone. No one insults anyone. That is literally rules that I have, right? But the people that are there, I don't even have to worry because they're just good people. And it doesn't matter whether you're running AMD, NVIDIA, Intel, no one cares, right? We're just trying to get the most out of the system. And so, you know, I've got people in there that are doing their own tutorials and offering it to people, right? So it's an awesome community and we're growing. I don't want the community to get too big because I want to be able to serve the community as best as I can. With that being said, I think it's about 25 or so people at the moment, which is great and healthy. I do want to grow this further. And so there's a whole bunch of cool benefits of joining Skool. Dedicated help and troubleshooting, a community chat, post engagement, a leaderboard, which is kind of fun, tuning and optimization guidance and tips. And as I develop the course, it'll be there. Early access to benchmarks and data. So the last video that was posted last Friday, the benchmarks were up in Skool 2 weeks earlier. I had to travel and other things, but they were up 2 weeks earlier. So if you were interested, you could have seen them there, but it's just in Skool that I post it that early, right? Weekly live Q&A sessions with me. So try and do that every single week unless I'm traveling or something. But every single week we have a live Q&A, typically go for an hour and a half, depending on schedule. And it's great, right? Just basically, I mean, what it feels like is just like a bunch of people with, friends with common interests, just hanging out and chatting. It's pretty cool because I love talking about tech. Like pretty much all day long, I'd love to talk about tech, much to my wife's dismay, right? So a couple of things. Over the next couple of days, I do have a sale. It's 40% off. It's 40% off an annual subscription, right? But it's going to end midnight on Cyber Monday. So it's just from today through Cyber Monday. In addition, because of the issues with RAM availability and pricing, I'm going to give away 3 RAM kits. So I'm going to give away a Kingston Fury Renegade. That's this one here. 32 gigabyte DDR5 6400 CL32 kit. That's a phenomenal kit for if you've got an AMD X3D or non-X3D system. Like if you've got a 9700X or something, that's an outstanding kit. It's a great kit for AMD. I wouldn't necessarily want that kit if I had an Intel system, but great kit for AMD. I'm also giving away a 7200 CL38 kit. Again, Kingston Fury Renegade, 32 gigabytes. That's a great kit for Intel, right? And then in addition, I'm giving away a Corsair Dominator Platinum 64 gig, so dual rank 6600 kit. So this is a great kit whether you're AMD or Intel. So for AMD, what you do is you take that 6600 kit. First of all, you try and run it at 6600. If you happen to have a platinum sample, you try and run it in one-to-one mode at 6600. And if you get it to run, I will buy your CPU from you, okay? I just want to be very clear. You've got a platinum sample memory controller, one of a handful that can run 6600 in one-to-one mode. For most other people, I would drop that to 6400 and lower your timings to CL30 or even CL28 and run that. Again, it's a dual rank kit, so it's a phenomenal kit. Beautiful looking kit. You can't run it if you've got a small form factor case because the RAM is quite high, but outstanding looking kit, great RGB. Actually, I think both of them are beautiful looking kits. So my plan is to give those kits away in Skool. So there's going to be 3 chances to win. So kind of each live we do over the next few weeks, I'm going to give one away. So I want to try and get that given away over December so that you've got them for the holidays and you can do things with them. I'm not going to sit on a pile of RAM, although you probably do see a bunch of RAM next to me here because I'm testing it. These are the kits, by the way. Let's see. These are the kits here, just to prove that they're real. These are the kits, right? So 2 Renegade kits and 1 Corsair Dominator kit. That's them. So yeah, so apart from getting a discount on signing up, you also go into the running of getting some RAM. So if you do sign up and you get a RAM kit, your subscription is free for like 3 years or whatever the RAM is worth. I don't know what these RAM kits are worth, but you saw they're on the order of $4,000. I would say the dual rank kit is probably worth about $700, and the other kits are around the $400, $300, and something dollar mark. So anyway, so that's my plug for Skool. It really is a great community. Talk to any of the people that are in there, reach out to them. Tony, Scott, DayZeus that are here in the chat. I think they all get a lot of value out of it, and I really appreciate it's great. I really appreciate their positivity and energy because sometimes you just have a rough day or whatever it may be, and I kind of go to this community and it's awesome just to be part of it. So I really appreciate those of you that have done that and support the channel. The other thing is that by doing this, the reason I did this is that I want to continue to keep the channel bias free. And the best way to do that is to not take sponsorships from particularly from component manufacturers that want you to say certain things. I think that's the best way to stay bias free, and I think that's the trap that channels get into as they grow, is that, and there's nothing wrong with this, but they take money from sponsors because they need the money to survive, and that puts them in an awkward position, right? Like, hey, you just got a 5080. If you don't, Gigabyte gave me a 5080. If I don't say good things about it, they're likely not gonna, they won't say that, right? But they're likely not gonna give you a 5080 in the future or a 6080, whatever. So you're in this weird, you put in this weird position, and I want to try and avoid that as much as possible, right? So this is one of the ways that I came up with, and it's great, as the community, as I said, is awesome. All right, how are we doing on time? We got nearly an hour. I just want to run through this quickly. This was the last video. I've been trying to do some new thumbnails, so that's why this thumbnail looks a little bit different. I thought this is not a great look for me, but I think it worked in the idea of what I was trying to accomplish in this video, right? And I was trying to go for which one is the performance king, right, of gaming. And so I tested the 4 CPUs, 14900KS, 285K, 9950X3D, 9800X3D. And, I tuned these, but one thing I want to be clear about, and one thing that you'll see on my channel, I don't push the tunes to the limit. I intentionally don't do that. Some of it is to do with, learning how to push to the limit, particularly when you're not on nitrogen or other things. But the reason that I don't, like, for example, go to the 14900 KS and try to minimize the latency as much as humanly possible and really push it to the limit, there's multiple reasons for the 14900 KS, but the big one is I want people that see my guides to realize that they can do this. And I also want them to understand that you don't need exotic cooling. You can run this as a daily driver and get this level of performance. That's my goal, right? It's like tuning for everyone. It's the dummy's guide to tuning, right? That type of approach, which is, this is the easy way to do it, right? Using PBO in AMD, it's very, very fast and very easy to get a really fantastic boost in performance. Same thing on Intel. It's very easy to go in and dial in some things, test your stability, and get a great boost in performance. We're talking 10%. Now, does that mean I leave something on the table? Absolutely. I'm pretty sure on the 285K, I can lower the latency further. I can get another, 2% maybe if I really push it. But I wouldn't run that as a daily driver. And that's kind of the middle ground I want to kind of sit in. I'm not a big fan of just running PCs stock. I'm also not a big fan of pushing them to the extreme and having them die in a year or not die, but have errors pop up and get frustrated with it, because then you're not going to do it. You're just going to go back to stock. I want somewhere that's, like, I don't know, 7/8 of the max, without going that extra 1/8 to get to that ultimate thing, right? So I may do some videos in the future that really push to the limit, but I just don't see the point, because it's very much diminishing returns. You dump a lot of voltage and other things into them to get that extra few percent, and I just don't think it's worth it. But I don't, by the way, anyone that does do that, I applaud them for doing that. It's just my philosophy, right? I do not think that that's a bad thing. I think that it's great, and I think everyone has their place within the broader community, but that's really where I want to sit, right? All right, let's see. All right, so in this video, I talked about gaming quality index again, but I took a little bit of a different approach. So as you know, that I keyed it to 60 FPS, 1% lows, and then I had the variability of frame pacing, right? So average FPS minus 1% low FPS divided by average. That means that if you've got a huge amount of variation, it's going to impact. So if you've got big frame time variations or spikes, it's going to impact your gaming experience. It's going to feel worse than if you have a very smooth experience, right? So just to keep that in mind. So over the 11 games, I tested at 1080p low, which puts maximum load on the CPU, 1440p medium, which is kind of typical of what some first-person shooters are, and then 4K Ultra is like single-player, ultimate, graphics, right? To see how that would impact the performance. And so what's not surprising is the 9800 XGD did extremely well under heavy load, but when it's GPU bound, so under heavy CPU load, so when it's heavily CPU bound, when it's GPU bound, we had this phenomenon where the 285K is able to get a 6% increase in 1% load performance over the 9800 XGD, and I think that's because of the L3 cache filling up and under those conditions. And so I also looked at the GQI, or the gaming experience, over those 11 games. And what's fascinating is that, yes, at under heavy CPU loads, the 9800 XGD was dominant. But again, under heavy GPU loads, the 285K was quite dominant, right? With a 9% improvement over the 9800 XGD, which was fascinating to me. So I'd never really looked at GQI this way before. I was looking at categorizing it and other things, and I realized it's a pretty effective tool to look at the relative gaming experience between CPUs. Now, standing back, all of these CPUs would deliver an amazing experience at every resolution and game setting here. I just want to be clear. They'll deliver a great experience. The question is which one is best, and that's what the video was about. It was identifying which one is best. So if you just look at game performance, that's your traditional 1% lows and average FPS, you can see that AMD won 52% of the time versus Intel. And I have the actual CPU listed that won. So something that confused people is, wait, how can you have the 14900 KS win so many battles, but then, lose out to the 285K in the average? And the reason is that the 285K was likely very close to the 14900 KS in most of these tests. But in some of them, like with the 9800 X3D one, or here in Call of Duty, it was a long way ahead of it. So on average, it provided better performance. That's really all that means, right? Same thing for the 9950 X3D, right? It won a whole bunch of tests here. And then, but when you look at gameplay experience, it switched. So if you just looked at raw performance, as what you're used to when you look at benchmarks from other channels, you would see AMD on top. Now, it didn't dominate, but it won 52% of the time. And that flipped when you looked at gameplay experience. So Intel CPUs are actually delivering a better overall gameplay experience. And what's fascinating is this kind of aligns with the feedback I get from people that have tested both systems. Not fanboys of one or the other. I really don't care about fanboyism. Like, it's you do you, that's fine. But it's not what I'm interested in. I'm a fan of all of these, right? I currently have a 9950X in the system that I'm using for this computer. I have all of the systems because I test them, right? Obviously. But I have a 14900 KS for a gaming system. So I use a whole bunch of different CPUs. I don't care which one comes out on top. What I care about is why. I care about why did it come out on top? Like how? And when I hear feedback from people saying, hey, I have this chip, but it doesn't feel as good as like an older chip I had, I want to know why. And that's what led to GQI. I was like, what is it that average and 1% lows aren't capturing? And what I believe it is the gameplay experience. I believe that's what it's not capturing, which is why I created the GQI, or Gaming Quality Index, and why in the last video I showed the performance and I showed this, right? So it's interesting. Now, of course, this wouldn't be complete if you don't look at value, and value is where the 9800 X3D dominated. I mean, like, dominated. It's a much cheaper CPU. Now, of course, it doesn't perform as well in professional workloads as the other CPUs. Got it. Just focusing on gaming value, it provides a lot better value. And that's at 1080p, and even at 4K, it's still dominating, right? Now, you can look at these. I always, in my videos, I just want to explain this because some people miss this. I show value, which is basically performance per dollar, versus price. And the reason I do this is such that when you get fluctuations in RAM prices suddenly, the video isn't suddenly not useful, right? So you can basically go in and say, if I've got a 285K and I add the CPU price and the RAM together, I can spot that on this in the x-axis, and let's just say that it dropped in price. I could go to $900, go up to the curve and say, all right, my value is roughly 32, something like that, and see how it compares to some of the others. That's why these charts are valuable, right? And that's why I throw them in there. Same thing here. This is at 4K now. And obviously all the curves compress at 4K. It's fascinating that the Intel curves are higher than the others, but of course, it matters where you are on the curve, not just that the curve is higher. So the 14900 KS is roughly offering the same value as the 9950 X3D, whereas the 9800 X3D is offering much better value. 285K lags behind because I used DDR5 9000 CUDIM RAM, and when I made this video, CUDIM RAM had already exploded in price. It was the first to go up. So that got penalized here, right? And then I wrapped up with a final assessment. And my final assessment looked at synthetic benchmarks, professional applications, gaming performance, gaming experience, power efficiency, price, value, availability, as of that date, by the way, overclockability, and future upgradability. All of the things that people bring up. I had a bunch of people on the video say, you never looked at the upgradability of the platform. Yeah, I did. I had it in here and I talked about it. And so, and what's crazy is that I had some AMD fanboys say that I was wrong. And I said to them, did you watch the video? Because I actually selected the 9800 X3D as the king of gaming, right? But there's a but there. It is the king of gaming. However, and under heavy CPU loads, which is how you determine it. However, if you want the best gaming experience that money can buy at 4K, 285K is a better option. That's just data, right? And so it's crazy to me that, you know, like, why does that offend anyone? Like, who cares, right? And it doesn't mean that 285K offers better value. It doesn't. I gave that to 9800 XD because it does. I gave the price to the 9800 XD because it's data. I don't get offended that the particular CPU that I purchased or that I like doesn't have a tick, right? So I just, hopefully you can see that that's kind of silly, right? It's better just to try and be as objective as possible, look through the data as unbiased as you can. For example, overclockability, they all got about 10% improvement in performance, so I gave them all a tick. Future upgradability, I gave the AM5 platform a better tick because, as you know, Raptor Lake is end of life, well, unless that Bartlett Lake chip comes out, right? And man, when you think about it, Raptor Lake, they've had 1, 2, 3, that if Bartlett Lake comes out, that'd be 4 gen. That's actually not bad. But at the current point in time, it doesn't have a lot of runway. 285K, same. There's going to be a refresh early next year. My guess is Intel's going to announce it at CES. And but that's going to be a refresh chip. It's kind of like the 14th series over the 13th gen series for Intel. Not really an upgrade, whereas AM5 is going to get Zen 6, and that is, from all rumors, if they're true, supposed to be a significant upgrade in the memory controller, which I'm super excited about, because that is the weakness here. The weakness of the AM5 Ryzen CPUs is their memory controller, and the strength of Intel CPUs is the memory controller. So it's going to be really interesting next year when these things go head to head. I can't wait for it. I'm getting a little sick of running CPU memory tests, so after this one, I'm going to go back to do a GPU test in the future, which should be interesting. But yeah, I mean, that's what I wanted to share with you. So I think I got it right. I think that 9800 X3D is, I think, calling it the king of gaming. I think the 9950 X3D is an outstanding chip. If you use third-party tools to prioritize the cores and basically put the second CCD to sleep, it will match the 9800 X3D, and then at higher resolutions it will defeat the 9800 X3D because it has more cores to handle the increased load. So still a phenomenal chip, but it's hard to go past the 9800 X3D just based on the performance and value. I mean, it's a great option. I see why a lot of people went with it. So I think I got it right. So let's see. Yes, Tony, I do believe that Zen 6 will support CUDIM. I think it would be, especially if they have a better memory controller and they want to support speeds of like DDR5 8400 or 8800, I think supporting CUDIM makes sense. Let's see. Scott is building a new machine and has a 9070 XT. You will be able to run in 4K. And if you can't natively use FSR4, it's outstanding. It really is very, very good. AMD made such a huge leap forward with RDNA 4 in ray tracing and upscaling that they're very close to NVIDIA on upscaling. And in some games, they've exceeded NVIDIA in ray tracing, like Cyberpunk 2077. It's fascinating that they were able to do that. So hats off to them. Hey AMD, if you're listening, get us some new GPUs to compete versus the high end and NVIDIA. And hey, I'll be a fan after that. If you can help us bring down the pricing of GPUs, that would be good. So hopefully you're working on that next gen. I don't give a crap about previous gen. I want you to work on the next gen and put all of your effort into that because we need competition. We need competition everywhere. Intel, you need to step up and not screw up a launch like you did with the 285K, configure the chip properly, do what you have to do, but we need your competition for AMD, and AMD, we need your competition for NVIDIA. That is my take on the current space, right? We need strong competition. So hopefully the next Intel chip will compete well versus Zen 6, and then prices come down, we all get to choose whatever we want. I get to test awesome chips and have a very close battle. I like nothing more than testing chips not knowing what the outcome is going to be. That's why I like testing the GQI, because I had no idea what the outcome would be. So when I finish testing, I make the charts and I'm like, if I'm surprised, first of all, that's a good thing, because I think that means I'm unbiased if I'm surprised. And I look and I'm like, oh, that's cool. For example, when I saw this flip here, I was very happy to see this flip. The game performance to this. When I saw that flip, I'm like, all right, I have an interesting story to tell here that no other channel is telling. So I thought that was cool. Let's see, what else we got? Fallen Legion, hey buddy. Nice to see where and how you're testing the games, or what areas in the games you're testing it. Okay, great. Fallen Legion, that is an excellent question. So Fallen Legion asks, it'd be nice to see where and how you're testing the games. Are you just using built-in benchmarks, or what areas in the games you're testing in? I'd like to compare. Excellent question, and there's quite a lot of passionate people about this. And my philosophy is, when I test, I need consistency. I test the benchmark 5 times or more. Particularly if I make a mistake, I'll retest it over and over again. So I use built-in benchmarks as much as possible. My philosophy on built-in benchmarks is the game designer, developer created that built-in benchmark to represent the game. So there's a lot of people that will go and say, don't run the built-in benchmark, it's GPU bound or CPU bound, and when you're in the game, there's a section when you're next to a tree and standing next to 5 people that it's going to be CPU bound. So it doesn't really, I think it's garbage. The game developer, if you think you know better than the game developer, good, you do you. But the game developer developed the built-in benchmark. That's why I predominantly test that way. Except for a game like Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, it does not have a built-in benchmark, but what I can do is I can run like New York and I can put it in autopilot and it will take exactly the same path every single time and the results are repeatable. So that's really my criteria. The other reason I do it is that so you, the viewer, can take my settings that I show you in the videos for the benchmarks and replicate the results. You can check me, right? There's a lot of YouTubers out there that do not want to be critiqued or checked. They test custom sections of games so that if you say, hey, that's wrong, they can be like, you didn't test the same section. You're like, okay, tell me the section. No, I'm not doing that. I don't care. Go test. Go test the benchmarks. Go test these benchmarks. And by the way, if you find a mistake, please let me know. That's a good thing, because then I can not make the mistake in the future and I can fix things, right? But that's why I do it. So I'm unable, because of my philosophy there, I'm unable to test everything. One of the things I am going to do is I'm going to figure out, or try to figure out, a consistent way to test Battlefield 6, because I think it's interesting and it's a very popular game. It does not have a built-in benchmark, which I wish it did, and maybe they'll add one. But I really want to figure that out, and so I'm going to do that. And I'll see. If I can't get it consistent, then I'm not going to test it. That's my philosophy. Really good question. I've explained that in a lot of earlier videos, but I should probably spend some time explaining it in a newer video. All right. I think that's pretty good. Let's see. We're at 3:15. I, like you, probably have a bunch of other things to do today. You have to go check out sales. And I've promised my daughter that I need to put up decorations, which I actually really enjoy doing. I love the holiday period. It's always been a favorite of mine. So hopefully you got a lot out of today. I really do. I think that discovering things and, kind of discovering trends like this is a good thing. I do actually really appreciate it when someone goes in the comments and says, hey, I don't appreciate trolls, but I do appreciate when someone goes in the comments and has a very strong opinion and shares it. As long as they don't say this is data, because it's not, it's an opinion, shares it with me and I can discuss it with them. There's plenty of times in the comments where I think I'm right, and then someone articulates their point of view and I look at it and think, wow, okay, I might not be right here. And so I go away and check, and sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. But it's actually I think that's very good. And that's the type of community that we're trying to grow in Skool, right? Is that have that freedom to question. And like Glenn, when he pointed out that issue that I explained earlier with 285K, he reached out to me and said, hey, your latency may not be as low as it should be. And that's where the discussion happened. So that was pretty cool. And then everyone gets to learn. So I really do appreciate that. I appreciate all the support that I've gotten over the last 2 years. This is, I enjoy doing this. This is a choice that I made, and I'm really happy that I did. I get to interact and build the greatest community online. I really do think that's true. From the subscribers, those of you that supported me early, I greatly appreciate it. It's really hard to support a small channel. Like when you've got 20 subscribers and you see comments, people coming in like, who is this idiot, right? Like he's got 20 subscribers. Well, you got to grow somewhere. You got to start somewhere. So I really do appreciate you like coming in and supporting me as I've been growing and on this journey. The channel's going to be, 10 million subs at some point in the future. And you're all the people and viewers that supported me early on. And I greatly appreciate that because it means a lot. People that support the channel financially or with views and clicks and likes, I appreciate it. I really greatly do. And it's something that, yesterday at Thanksgiving, I was very much appreciative of, given that it's a 2-year anniversary. So thank you so much. I would encourage you to check out Skool and have a chance to win some memory, and hopefully you find some really good sales and you find what you're after at some of the sales. And Cyber Monday hopefully is good as well. Hopefully it's not all just today. But thank you so much. I appreciate you. I really do. Have a wonderful weekend. And again, if you're in the US, happy Thanksgiving. It's a small run here on into the holidays. So I'm looking forward to that. But I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Bye.